Open chat. All right, hi everyone. This is Greg Muna, aka Master Moo, and it is in New York. It is Saturday, May 10th, 2025, for our most current installment of Art is the Church of God, the Creator. And we say that seriously, although perhaps, it may be amusing to say. But if you believe it, as I do, feel free to say it. Art is the Church of God the Creator. And as we said, we're not afraid of dropping the G word. We're not afraid of theological language. We know that that doesn't make us fanatics or crazy people or on Messiah trips or any sort of delusional thing like that. We're simply expressing sincere belief of what we consider to be true and of supreme importance. And those of us who are paying attention to this work believe in art. And so this began as a series of podcasts talking about my own creative process and creating in my music and my audio video works, which you see directly below my head on the screen. And so you can go back to previous episodes, and I give sort of a basic overview of my compositional process, my background as a composer, and how I've tried to, join this with audiovisual representations of sound, pitches, rhythms, counterpoints, and audio processes. And but I've expanded the purview of this from a purely discussion of my purely personal creative process and my purely personal musical influences to a more general, open-ended discussion of art and what it means for us, for people who love art. And that's why we use the perhaps provocative title of Art is the Church of God, the Creator. And in order to sort of keep it relevant, I generally connect this to my own encounters with art and my own encounters with life. And in this past week or two, there have been some sort of significant examples of that nexus between art and life. And 10 days ago was May 1st, was International Workers' Day. And as a consequence of that, I was thinking about the subject of the representations of labor in art. And there are certainly beautiful representations. I mean, especially in older art, like paintings of Bruegel and, but so that get to the sense of the sacredness of labor as opposed to the degradedness of labor. I think the negative attitudes that we have about labor really have a lot to do with industrialization. I mean, if we look at pre-industrialized societies' representations of labor, that is to say in like Renaissance or Baroque painting, there's some more sense of the inherent dignity of everyday work, whatever that is, farming or artisanal work. It seems that, with the transition to the rise of urban proletariat and factory work, that work just in general for working people became so much more stressful and dirty and dangerous, and that we've had this negative overhang. And I think really it seems that ever since the late 1700s, since the beginning of the modern era of industrialization, we've internalized all these negative attitudes about work, and so we've come to view work and our role within the working world as sort of negative, disposable, not to be spoken of, not to be valued, just as purely as a means to an end, as a way to, pay for survival and to have some discretionary cash to distract ourselves with consumerism. So it seems to me that this is completely this situation makes it impossible for anyone to have an actual progressive attitude towards labor. If labor is just negative and we don't want to think about it, we don't want to think about what we do, then we're never going to view ourselves in that context, and we'll never have any sense of identification with the work that we do. And that has basically what has doomed all labor movements from day one. I mean, in the United States, in the 20th century, when we had some governmental support, there was like a generation or two of support for unionized labor, but that was very difficult to establish, and it was very quickly eroded. And for the past 40 to 50 years in the United States, there's been continuous backsliding and less support for workers' rights and for labor, and consequently, the situation for workers has declined in the United States, and despite the fact that productivity has increased and so on. So it seems to me that the only way out of this cul-de-sac in the 21st century is to actually think of labor in theological terms, to think about the sacredness of labor, to view the work that we do, the physical work that we do to survive, as inherently meaningful, as inherently of value to society, as inherently beneficial to all of humanity. And so I was looking for examples of this way of thinking in literature, and I came across, I reevaluated something I've read previously. I'm holding it up to the screen. Can we see it here? The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. Or we're not getting a good screenshot there. But so I introduced this in my previous episode. This is part 2 of a discussion of labor, the sacredness of labor in the Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, which is a 1993 speculative fiction novel. Octavia Butler died in 2006, and this was the first segment of an unfinished novel. What's very intriguing about it is that the timeline of the novel is the present day. It starts in the year 2024, it continues through 2025, and goes into 2026. So it was an alternate future written in the early 1990s, which has now become an alternate present in the year 2025. And there are a lot of interesting parallels to present-day society, which I don't need to underline. And one does not have to sign up for or endorse Butler's viewpoints politically or socially in order to get her larger point, which is that the whole novel is essentially a literary expansion or gloss of the passage from the Bible called the Parable of the Sower, which I read in the last time, which was one of Jesus's parables. And a parable is a fictional allegory, is a story, an allegorical story, which has a moral meaning which must be interpreted. And again, this is reiterating from our last episode, the Parable of the Sower. Jesus talks about a farmer scattering seeds on different types of soils, and some of them do not bear fruit, and some of them do bear lots of fruit. So fruitful seed planting versus unfruitfulness. And then what's very interesting about the Parable of the Sower from the standpoint of literature is that that Jesus then talks about that with his disciples, about the importance of literary interpretation. The disciples say, well, why do you speak in parables when you could just speak directly? And then he says that it's important to actually think about words, that the seeds in the parable represent words, and the words have got to be presented in a certain context in order to bear fruit. So the fruitfulness of language in terms of being beneficial, the fruitfulness, the beneficial quality, right, of in terms of, in this case, in terms of Jesus's words. But Octavia Butler then takes this as a kind of a paradigm of the writer's task of to sort of sow words. And it's very, very interesting that she wrote this in 1993. She died about in the following decade. She died in 2006. It's 20 years later, actually 30 years, more than 30 years since she wrote the novel. In fact, there's a tremendous upsurge. So this parable of the sower is an example of the biblical parable of the sower in action, this fruition of the seeds which she planted decades ago now coming to fruition. So I think that gives us a way of thinking about labor which is positive. And other themes in the novel, survivalism, violence, space exploration, those are of much less interest to me, So I don't want to read it in terms of the violence or the guns or the protagonist's interest in extraplanetary colonization, Mars. I have no interest in any of that. I'm interested in the larger theme, the sacredness of art, in this case, literary art, using words in a way which is artful and which will benefit humanity. So last week I started reading from the beginning of the timeline, which was in 2024, and the narrative takes the form of diary entries of the protagonist, Lauren Oyolamina, and she's living in, again, a fictionalized California in a sort of suburb of Los Angeles, and it begins when she's 15 years old in July of 2024. So she would be born in 2009. Her father is 54 years old, so he would have been born in 1970. And the so before I jump back into reading it, we're up to page 21. We were up to, in the timeline, we were coming up to, we read through August 3rd of 2024, and we're continuing with August 12th of 2024. My goal is to bring us up to the present of the timeline of Parable of the Sower. Think about it in relation to the idea of labor, which was, last May 1st, Workers' Day, the idea of the importance of labor not merely as a means to an end, but as an inherently valuable aspect of humanity, something that is not only that we must do, but something that we should do, that we should use our gifts and our skills with tremendous effort, with tremendous energy, with tremendous faith, with tremendous persistence, even in the face of overwhelming odds and lack of confirmation, for the benefit of all humanity. And that if we use our inherent sets, our unique inherent sets of skills and gifts, which are unique to each individual person, and work very hard with tremendous persistence, with tremendous faith, if we bring together essentially that grace of the gifts and skills with the faith of persistence, diligence, interpretation, even in the face of incomprehension, even in the face of lack of response and so on, even in the face of inadequate response or negative response, but with a vision of benefit, i.e. a non-dual vision that is not subjectivist, not based upon subjective exploitation or subjective gain, really, in terms of trying to achieve some sort of illusory dominance, but actually a sense of non-subjective flourishing, eudaimonia, as Aristotle would say, the general flourishing of all of humanity. This is what work should be and must be. And we have to have this sort of emphatic, positive, dare I say it, theological sense of labor in order to move out of the cul-de-sac of the gaslighting where working people are constantly undermined by oligarchs, by oligarchy globally. And which leads us to our second anniversary, which was that yesterday was Victory Day. May 9th was celebrated throughout the former Soviet world, and May 8th was Victory of Europe Day. So May 8th and 9th marked the end of the war in Europe in World War II. And it's now 80 years since the conclusion of the European War, World War II in Europe. And this is an extraordinary milestone. I mean, of course, the April 30th would have been the suicide of Hitler and the invasion of the Allied invasion of Berlin and so on. We all know the historical background, right? And of course, the war continued in the Pacific through August with the unfortunate the destruction of Japan and the surrender of Japan. But leave that for another day. We're commemorating the end of the European War and what that means in terms of the global struggle, remembering those who sacrificed everything in the struggle against fascism, and which is simply the 20th century's oligarchy. Just as in before the 20th century, there was the struggle against absolutist monarchies, and going all the way back towards the struggles against, warlordism in the medieval periods and ancient slave society. So, this is going to the very beginning of time, these humanity's struggle to achieve self-determination as opposed to determination by and ever since the rise of, you can say, urban civilization. So for the past 5,000 years, I'm sure power dynamics were probably quite different in earlier tribal or hunter-gatherer societies. But in terms of large-scale civilization and, the definitive conscious breaks towards self-determination, towards democracy in the West, in European history, began around 500 BC, both simultaneously in Greece with the idea of direct democracy and in ancient Rome the idea of representative democracy. Right? And so we can view the anniversary that we've just marked here as a kind of a culmination point, and there have been triumphs and there have been retrogression, and this is not the time or the place to discuss politics. We can. The focus of this is art, but I want to look at art that gives us hope for the future, as well as which is successful as art. And so I hope to revisit this issue of victory and the significance of Victory Day and Victory over Europe in upcoming. I've been looking for artistic examples, but so far I haven't found examples which didn't sort of fall into the agitprop, propaganda soundtrack type of thing. I was listening to music by American and Russian and Allied composers of the 1940s, and I haven't found any examples yet. Maybe there are some better examples in literature or in the visual arts. I'll try to look for that. And one other note is that today and tomorrow are the last days of this magnificent exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of New York of the paintings of the great Caspar David Friedrich, who was a German romantic landscape painter whose dates are 1774 to 1840. And he was the first generation of romantic painters, and he developed a new style of painting of a kind of metaphysical landscape that combined nature imagery with religious imagery, and really is, I said to friends, he's really the Ursprung of Kunstreligion and nature religion in painting, just as in the early romantics, like in the poetry of Wordsworth, and so on. And of course, in the music of Beethoven, like the Pastoral Symphony. So this is this combination of sort of the sacredness of nature and artistic representations, and the sacredness of art as a kind of surrogate religion or a supplementary religion. This is very much so. If you're in New York today, tomorrow's the closing day, go to the Met Museum and see these amazing, magnificent paintings of Caspar David Friedrich, the cross in the mountains, the wanderer above the sea of fog. That's really the archetypal image that inspired Schopenhauer and Nietzsche, and as well as the images of the Sea of Ice, which definitely inspired poets, and images of people contemplating the moon and the moonrise, and the images of the winter, images of the wanderers in winter, which are definitely connect to not only the sound worlds of Beethoven, but the sound worlds of the leader composers of Schubert and Schumann and Brahms. Quite magnificent painter, so hopefully we'll have more to say about that in the future. But today's topic is bringing Parable of the Sower, trying to bring it up to the timeline of Parable of the Sower up to the present day. So if you're reading along in your textbook in this edition here, we're currently on page 21, and we're trying to get from pages 21 to about page 79. See how far we can get today. And okay, so in our previous episode, we met the protagonist, Lauren Olamina. She was 15, and she talked about her religious feelings and her relationship to her father, who is a Baptist pastor, and sort of community dynamics within her church, her father's church, and in the community where she lives, which is a gated or a walled community, which is relatively peaceful, but outside the walls of her community in this, again, alternate reality 2024, there's crime, there's homelessness, there is disease, there's desperation, and she was described going on a bicycle expedition to another community's church for a baptism, and seeing, the human degradation that was all around. So this is sort of the first confrontation of her relatively sheltered, peaceful life with her family and her father, with this hostile and sort of horrific outside world. Okay, so back to the journal of the protagonist, Lauren Olamina, for Monday. It's chapter 3. Yes, we're in chapter 3, and we said last time that the protagonist is in the process of writing her thoughts, her religious thoughts, into her own new religion, Earthseed. So it's the portrait of the prophet as a young woman, like, in other words, the author's imaginative task here is to imagine the formative years, the teenage years of someone who is the founder of a great religion, like Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism, who would be knowing like one of the founders of one of these great world religions, as a young person. Okay, so here we go. Monday, August 12th, 2024. Mrs. Sims shot herself today, or rather, she shot herself a few days ago, and Corey and Dad found her today. Corey went a little crazy for a while afterward. Poor, sanctimonious old Mrs. Sims. She used to sit in our front room church every Sunday, large print Bible in hand, and shout out her responses. Yes, Lord! Hallelujah! Thank you, Jesus! Amen! During the rest of the week she sewed, made baskets, took care of her garden, sold what she could from it, took care of preschool children, and talked about everyone who wasn't as holy as she thought she was. She was the only person I've ever known who lived alone. She had a whole big house to herself because she and the wife of her only son hated each other. Her dad and his family were poor, but they wouldn't live with her. Too bad. Different people frightened her in some deep, hard, ugly way. She didn't like the Shu family because they were Chinese and Hispanic, and the older Chinese generation is still Buddhist. She's lived a couple of doors up from them for longer than I've been alive, but they were still from Saturn as far as she was concerned. Idolaters, she would call them, if none of them were around. At least she cared enough about neighborly relations to do her talking about them behind their backs. They brought her peaches and figs and a length of good cotton cloth last month when she was robbed. That robbery was Mrs. Sims' first major tragedy. 3 men climbed over the neighborhood wall, cutting through the strands of barbed wire and laser wire on top. Laser wire is terrible stuff. It's so fine and sharp that it slices into the wings or feet of birds who either don't see it or try to settle on it. People, though, can always find a way over, under, or through. Everyone brought Mrs. Sims things after the robbery in spite of the way she was. Food, clothing, money. We took up collections for her at church. The thieves had tied her up and left her after one of them raped her. An old lady like that. They grabbed all her food, her jewelry that had once belonged to her mother, her clothes, and worst of all, her supply of cash. Turns out she kept that, all of it, in a blue plastic mixing bowl high up in her kitchen cabinet. Poor, crazy old lady. She came to my father, crying and carrying on after the robbery, because now she couldn't buy the extra food she needed to supplement what she grew. She couldn't pay her utility bills or her upcoming property taxes. She would be thrown out of her house into the street. She would starve. Dad told her over and over that the church would never let that happen. But she didn't believe him. She talked on and on about having to be a beggar now, while Dad and Corey tried to reassure her. The funny thing is, she didn't like us either, because Dad had gone and married that Mexican woman, Corazon. It just isn't that hard to say Corazon, if that's what you choose to call her. Most people just call her Corey or Mrs. Olamina. Corey never let on that she was offended. She and Mrs. Sims were sugary sweet to one another. A little more hypocrisy to keep the peace. Last week, Mrs. Sims's son, his 5 kids, his wife, her brother, and her brother's 3 kids all died in a house fire, an arson fire. The son's house had been in an unwalled area north and east of us, closer to the foothills. It wasn't a bad area, but it was poor. Naked. One night someone torched the house. Maybe it was a vengeance fire set by some enemy of a family member, or maybe some crazy just set it for fun. I've heard there's a new illegal drug that makes people want to set fires. Anyway, no one knows who did it to the Sims-Boyer families. No one saw anything, of course. And no one got out of the house. Odd that. 11 people, and no one got out. So about 3 days ago, Mrs. Sims shot herself. Dad said he'd heard from the cops that was about 3 days ago. That would have been just 2 days after she heard about her son's death. Dad went to see her this morning because she missed church yesterday. Corey forced herself to go along because she thought she should. I wish she hadn't. To me, dead bodies are disgusting. They stink. And if they're old enough, there are maggots. But what the hell? They're dead. They aren't suffering. And if you didn't like them when they were alive, why get so upset about their being dead? Corey gets upset. She jumps on me for sharing pain with the living, but she tries to share it with the dead. I began writing about Mrs. Sims because she killed herself. That's what's upset me. She believed, like Dad, that if you kill yourself, you go to hell and burn forever. She believed in a literal acceptance of everything in the Bible. Yet, when things got to be too much for her, she decided to trade pain for eternal pain in the hereafter. How could she do that? Did she really believe in anything at all? Was it all hypocrisy? Or maybe she just went crazy because her God was demanding too much of her. She was no Job. In real life, how many people are? Saturday, August 17th, 2024. I can't get Mrs. Sims out of my mind. Somehow she and her suicide have gotten tangled up with the astronaut and her death and her expulsion from heaven. I need to write about what I believe. I need to begin to put together the scattered verses that I've been writing about God since I was 12. Most of them aren't much good. They say what I need to say, but they don't say it very well. A few are the way they should be. They press on me, too, like the two deaths. I try to hide in all the work there is to do here for the household, for my father's church, and for the school Corey keeps to teach the neighborhood kids. The truth is, I don't care about any of those things, but they keep me busy and make me tired, and most of the time I sleep without dreaming. And Dad beams when people tell him how smart and industrious I am. I love him. He's the best person I know, and I care what he thinks. I wish I didn't, but I do. For whatever it's worth, here's what I believe. It took me a lot of time to understand it, then a lot more time with a dictionary and a thesaurus to say it just right, just the way it has to be. In the past year, it's gone through 25 or 30 lumpy, incoherent rewrites. This is the right one, the true one. This is the one I keep coming back to. God is power, infinite, irresistible, inexorable, indifferent. And yet, God is pliable, trickster, teacher, chaos, play. God exists to be shaped. God is change. This is the literal truth. God can't be resisted or stopped, but can be shaped and focused. This means God is not to be prayed to. Prayers only help the person doing the praying, and then only if they strengthen and focus that person's resolve. If they're used that way, they can help us in our only real relationship with God. They help us to shape God and to accept and work with the shapes that God imposes on us. God is power, and in the end, God prevails. But we can rig the game in our own favor if we understand that God exists to be shaped and will be shaped with or without our forethought, with or without our intent. That's what I know. That's some of it anyway. I'm not like Mrs. Sims. I'm not some kind of potential Job, long-suffering, stiff-necked, then at last either humble before an all-knowing Almighty or destroyed. My God doesn't love me or hate me or watch over me or know me at all, and I feel no love or loyalty to my God. My God just is. Maybe I'll be more like Alicia Leal, the astronaut. Like her, I believe in something that I think my dying, denying, backward-looking people need. I don't have all of it yet. I don't even know how to pass on what I do have. I've got to learn to do that. It scares me how many things I've got to learn. How will I learn them? Is any of this real? Dangerous question. Sometimes I don't know the answer. I doubt myself. I doubt what I think I know. I try to forget about it. After all, if it's real, why doesn't anyone else know about it? Everyone knows that change is inevitable. From the second law of thermodynamics to Darwinian evolution, from Buddhism's insistence that nothing is permanent and all suffering results from our delusions of permanence, to the third chapter of Ecclesiastes, to everything there is a season. Change is a part of life, of existence, of the common wisdom. But I don't believe we're dealing with all that means. We haven't even begun to deal with it. We give lip service to acceptance, as though acceptance were enough. Then we go on to create super people, super parents, super kings and queens, super cops, to be our gods and to look after us, to stand between us and God. Yet God has been here all along, shaping us and being shaped by us in no particular way or in too many ways all at once, like an amoeba or like a cancer. Chaos. Even so, why can't I do what others have done? Ignore the obvious. Live a normal life. It's hard enough just to do that in this world. But this thing, this idea, philosophy, new religion, won't let me alone, won't let me forget it, won't let me go. Maybe it's like my sharing, one more weirdness, one more crazy deep-rooted delusion that I'm stuck with. I am stuck with it. And in time, I'll have to do something about it. In spite of what my father will say or do to me, in spite of the poisonous rottenness outside the wall where I might be exiled, I'll have to do something about it. That reality scares me to death. Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. President William Turner Smith lost yesterday's election. Christopher Charles Morpeth Donner is our new president-elect. So what are we in for? Donner has already said that as soon as possible after his inauguration next year, he'll begin to dismantle the wasteful, pointless, unnecessary Moon and Mars programs. Near space programs dealing with communications and experimentation will be privatized, sold off. Also, Donner has a plan for putting people back to work. He hopes to get laws changed, suspend overly restrictive minimum wage, environmental, and worker protection laws for those employers willing to take on homeless employees and provide them with training and adequate room and board. What's adequate, I wonder? A house or apartment? A room? A bed in a shared room? A barracks bed? Space on a floor? Space on the ground? And what about people with big families? Won't they be seen as bad investments? Won't it make much more sense for companies to hire single people, childless couples, or at most people with only 1 or 2 kids? I wonder. And what about those suspended laws? Will it be legal to poison, mutilate, or infect people as long as you provide them with food, water, and space to die? Dad decided not to vote for Donner after all. He didn't vote for anyone. He said politicians turn his stomach. Okay, so now we're moving into the present timeline, 2025. And so we're in the section in this edition, page 29. It says 2025. Maybe we can see that on the screen. Okay. And the epigraph for 2025 from the writings of Lauren Olamina is this: intelligence is ongoing individual adaptability. Adaptations that an intelligent species may make in a single generation, other species make over many generations of selective breeding and selective dying. Yet, intelligence is demanding. If it is misdirected by accident or by intent, it can foster its own orgies of breeding and dying. Earthseed, the Books of the Living. Chapter 4, and again, Chapter 4, before we get back into her diary entries, begins with an epigraph, a specific epigraph from her religious writings of the protagonist, Lauren Olamina. So here is her epigraph to Chapter 4, the events of fictional 2025 this year. A victim of God may, through learning adaptation, become a partner of God. A victim of God may, through forethought and planning, become a shaper of God. Or a victim of God may, through short-sightedness and fear, remain God's victim, God's plaything, God's prey. Earthseed, the Books of the Living. So, Saturday, February 1st, 2025. We had a fire today. People worry so much about fire, but the little kids will play with it if they can. We were lucky with this fire. Amy Dunn, 3 years old, managed to start it in her family's garage. Once the fire began to crawl up the wall, Amy got scared and ran into the house. She knew she had done something bad, and so she didn't tell anyone. She hid under her grandmother's bed. Out back, the dry wood of the garage burned fast and hot. Robin Balter saw the smoke and rang the emergency bell on the island in our street. Robin's only 10, but she's a bright little kid, one of my stepmother's star students. She keeps her head. If she hadn't alerted people as soon as she saw the smoke, the fire could have spread. I heard the bell and ran out like everyone else to see what was wrong. The Dunns live across the street from us, so I couldn't miss the smoke. The fire plan worked the way it was supposed to. The adult men and women put out the fire with garden hoses, shovels, wet towels, and blankets. Those without houses beat at the edges of the fire and smothered them with dirt. Kids my age helped out where we were needed and put out any new fires started by flying embers. We brought buckets to fill with water and shovels, blankets, and towels of our own. There were a lot of us, and we kept our eyes open. The very old people watched the little kids and kept them out of the way and out of trouble. No one missed Amy. No one had seen her in the Dunn backyard, so no one thought about her. Her grandmother found her much later and got the truth out of her. The garage is a total loss. Edwin Dunn salvaged some of his garden and carpentry equipment, but not much. The grapefruit tree next to the garage and the 2 peach trees behind it were half burned, too. But they might survive. The carrot, squash, collard, and potato plants were a trampled mess. Of course, no one called the fire department. No one would take on fire service fees just to save an unoccupied garage. Most of our households couldn't afford another big bill anyway. The water wasted on putting out the fire was going to be hard enough to pay for. What will happen, I wonder, to poor little Amy Dunn? No one cares about her. Her family feeds her now and then cleans her up, but they don't love her or even like her. Her mother, Tracy, is only a year older than I am. She was 13 when Amy was born. She was 12 when her 27-year-old uncle, who had been raping her for years, managed to make her pregnant. Problem. Uncle Derek was a big, blonde, handsome guy, funny and bright and well-liked. Tracy is dull and homely, sulky and dirty-looking. Even when she's clean, she looks splotchy, dirty. Some of her problems might have come from being raped by Uncle Derek for years. Uncle Derek was Tracy's mother's youngest brother, her favorite brother. But when people realized what he had been doing, the neighborhood men got together and suggested he go live somewhere else. People didn't want him around their daughters. Irrational as usual, Tracy's mother blamed Tracy for his exile and for her own embarrassment. Not many girls in the neighborhood have babies before they drag some boy to my father and have him unite them in holy matrimony. But there was no one to marry Tracy, and no money for prenatal care or an abortion, and poor Amy, as she grew, looked more and more like Tracy, scrawny and splotchy with sparse, stringy hair. I don't think she'll ever be pretty. Tracy's maternal instincts didn't kick in, and I doubt that her mother, Christmas Dunn, has any. The Dunn family has a reputation for craziness. There are 16 of them living in the Dunn house, and at least a third are nuts. Amy isn't crazy, though, not yet. She's neglected and lonely, and like any little kid left on her own too much, she finds ways to amuse herself. I've never seen anyone hit Amy or curse her or anything like that. The Dunns do care what people think of them, but no one pays any attention to her either. She spends most of her time playing alone in the dirt. She also eats the dirt and whatever she finds in it, including bugs. But not long ago, just out of curiosity, I took her to our house, sponged her off, taught her the alphabet, and showed her how to write her name. She loved it. She's got a hungry, able little mind, and she loves attention. Tonight, I asked Corey if Amy could start school early. Corey doesn't take kids until they're 5 or close to 5, but she said she'd let Amy in if I would take charge of her. I expected that, though I don't like it. I help with the 5 and 6-year-olds anyway. I've been taking care of little kids since I was 1, and I'm tired of it. I think, though, that if someone doesn't help Amy now, someday she'll do something a lot worse than burning down her family's garage. Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. Pardon me, I'm sneezing, slightly allergic, springtime allergies. Back to Parable of the Sower. Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. Some cousins of old Mrs. Sims have inherited her house. They're lucky there's still a house to inherit. If it weren't for our walls, the house would have been gutted, taken over by squatters, or torched as soon as it was empty. As it was, all the people did was take back things they had given to Mrs. Sims after she was robbed, and take whatever food she had in the house. No sense letting it rot. We didn't take her furniture or her rugs or her appliances. We could have, but we didn't. We aren't thieves. Wardell Parrish and Rosalie Payne think otherwise. They're both small, rust-brown, sour-looking people like Mrs. Sims. They're the children of a first cousin that Mrs. Sims had managed to keep contact and good relations with. He's a widower, twice over, no kids, and she's been widowed once, 7 kids. They're not only brother and sister, but twins. Maybe that helps them get along with each other. They damn sure won't get along with anyone else. They're moving in today. They've been here a couple of times before to look the place over, and I guess they must have liked it better than their parents' house. They shared that with 18 other people. I was busy in the den with my class of younger school kids, so I didn't meet them until today, though I've heard Dad talking to them, heard them sit in our living room and insinuate that we had cleaned out Mrs. Sims' house before they arrived. Dad kept his temper. You know she was robbed during the month before she died, he said. You can check with the police about that if you haven't already. Since then, the community has protected the house. We haven't used it or stripped it. If you choose to live among us, you should understand that. We help each other, and we don't steal. I wouldn't expect you to say you did, Wardell Parrish muttered. His sister jumped in before he could say more. We're not accusing anyone of anything, she lied. We just wondered. We knew Cousin Marjorie had some nice things, jewelry that she inherited from her mother. Very valuable. Check with the police, my father said. Well, yes, I know, but this is a small community, my father said. We all know each other here. We depend on each other. There was a silence. Perhaps the twins were getting the message. We're not very social, Wardell Parrish said. We mind our own business. Again, his sister jumped in before he could go on. I'm sure everything will be all right, she said. I'm sure we'll get along fine. I didn't like them when I heard them. I liked them even less when I met them. They look at us as though we smell, and they don't. Of course, it doesn't matter whether I like them or not. There are other people in the neighborhood whom I don't like. But I don't trust the Payne parishes. The kids seem all right, but the adults, I wouldn't want to have to depend on them. Not even for little things. Payne and Parish, what perfect names they have. Saturday, February 22nd, 2025. We ran into a pack of feral dogs today. We went to the hills today for target practice. Me, my father, Joanne Garfield, her cousin and boyfriend Harry Balter, my boyfriend Curtis Talcott, his brother Michael, Aura Moss, and her brother Peter. Our other adult guardian was Joanne's father, Jay. He's a good guy and a good shot. Dad likes to work with him, although sometimes there are problems. The Garfields and the Balters are white, and the rest of us are black. That can be dangerous these days. On the street, people are expected to fear and hate everyone but their own kind, but with all of us armed and watchful, people stared, but they let us alone. Our neighborhood is too small for us to play those kinds of games. Everything went as usual at first. The Talcots got into an argument first with each other, then with the Mosses. The Mosses are always blaming other people for whatever they do wrong, so they tend to have disputes outstanding with most of us. Peter Moss is the worst because he's always trying to be like his father, and his father is a total shit. His father has 3 wives all at once: Karen, Natalie, and Zara. They've all got kids by him, though so far Zara, the youngest and prettiest, only has 1. Karen is the one with the marriage license, but she let him get away with bringing in the first one, then another new woman into the house and calling them his wives. I guess the way things are, she didn't think she could make it on her own with 3 kids when she brought in Natalie and 5 by the time she found Zara. The Mosses don't come to church. Richard Moss has put together his own religion, a combination of the Old Testament and historical West African practices. He claims that God wants men to be patriarchs, rulers and protectors of women, and fathers of as many children as possible. He is an engineer for one of the big commercial water companies, so he can afford to pick up beautiful, young, homeless women and live with them in polygamous relationships. He could pick up 20 women like that if he could afford to feed them. I hear there's a lot of that kind of thing going on in other neighborhoods. Some middle-class men prove they're men by having a lot of wives in temporary or permanent relationships. Some upper-class men prove they're men by having 1 wife and a lot of beautiful, disposable young servant girls. Nasty. When the girls get pregnant, if their rich employers won't protect them, the employers' wives throw them out to starve. Is that the way it's going to be, I wonder? Is that the future? Large numbers of people stuck in either President-elect Donner's version of slavery or Richard Moss's? We rode our bikes to the top of River Street, past the last neighborhood walls, past the last ragged, unwalled houses, past the last stretch of broken asphalt and rag and stick shacks of squatters and street poor who stare at us in their horrible, empty way, and then higher into the hills along a dirt road. At last, we dismounted and walked our bikes down the narrow trail into one of the canyons that we and others use for target practice. It looked all right this time, but we always have to be careful. People use canyons for a lot of things. If we find corpses in one, we stay away from it for a while. Dad tries to shield us from what goes on in the world, but he can't. Knowing that, he also tries to teach us to shield ourselves. Most of us have practiced at home with BB guns on homemade targets or on squirrel and bird targets. I've done all that. My aim is good, but I don't like it with the birds and the squirrels. Dad was the one who insisted on my learning to shoot them. He said moving targets would be good for my aim. I think there was more to it than that. I think he wanted to see whether or not I could do it, whether shooting a bird or squirrel would trigger my hyper-empathy. It didn't quite. I didn't like it, but it wasn't painful. It felt like a big, soft, strange ghost blow, like getting hit with a huge ball of air, but with no coolness, no feeling of wind. The blow, though still soft, was a little harder with squirrels and sometimes rats than with birds. All 3 had to be killed, though. They ate our food or ruined it. Tree crops were their special victims. Peaches, plums, figs, persimmons, nuts, and crops like strawberries, blackberries, grapes. Whatever we planted, if they could get at it, they would. Birds are particular pests because they can fly in, yet I like them. I envy their ability to fly. Sometimes I get up and go out at dawn just so I can watch them without anyone scaring them or shooting them. So now that I'm old enough to go target shooting on Saturdays, I don't intend to shoot any more birds, no matter what Dad says. Besides, just because I can shoot a bird or a squirrel doesn't mean that I could shoot a person, a thief, like the ones who robbed Mrs. Sims. I don't know whether I could do that. And if I did it, I don't know what would happen to me. Would I die? It's my father's fault that we pay so much attention to guns and shooting. He carries a 9mm automatic pistol whenever he leaves the neighborhood. He carries it on his hip where people can see it. He says that discourages mistakes. Armed people do get killed, most often in crossfires or by snipers, but unarmed people get killed a lot more often. Dad also has a silenced 9mm submachine gun. It stays at home with Corey in case something happens there while he's away. Both guns are German, Heckler and Koch. Dad has never said where he got the submachine gun. It's illegal, of course, so I don't blame him. It must have cost a hell of a lot. He's only had it away from home a few times so he, Corey, and I could get the feel of it. He'll do the same for the boys when they're older. Corey has an old Smith & Wesson .38 revolver that she's good with. She's had it since before she married Dad. She loaned that one to me today. Ours aren't the best or the newest guns in the neighborhood, but they all work. Dad and Corey keep them in good condition. I have to help with that now. They spent the necessary time on practice and money on ammunition. At neighborhood association meetings, Dad used to push the adults of every household to own weapons, maintain them, and know how to use them. Know how to use them so well, he said more than once, that you're able to defend yourself at 2 a.m., that you're as able to defend yourself at 2 a.m. as you are at 2 p.m. At first, there were a few neighbors who didn't like that, older ones who said it was the job of the police to protect them, younger ones who worried that their little children would find their guns, and religious ones who didn't think a minister of the gospel should need guns. This was several years ago. The police, my father told them, may be able to avenge you, but they can't protect you. Things are getting worse. As for your children, well, yes, there is a risk. But you can put your guns out of their reach while they're very young and train them as they grow older. That's what I mean to do. I believe they'll have a better chance of growing up if you can protect them. He paused, stared at the people, then went on. I have a wife and 5 children, he said. I will pray for them all. I'll also see to it that they know how to defend themselves. And for as long as I can, I will stand between my family and any intruder. He paused again. Now that's what I have to do. You all do what you have to do. By now, there are at least 2 guns in every household. Dad said he suspects that some of them are so well hidden, like Mrs. Simms's guns, that they wouldn't be available in an emergency. He's working on that. All the kids who attend school at our house get gun handling instruction. Once they've passed that and turned 15, 2 or 3 of the neighborhood adults begin taking them to the hills for target practice. It's kind of a rite of passage for us. My brother Keith has been wanting to go along whenever someone gets a shooting group together, but the age rule is firm. I worry about the way Keith wants to get his hands on the guns. Dad doesn't seem to worry, but I do. There are always a few groups of homeless people and packs of feral dogs living out beyond the last hillside shacks. People and dogs hunt rabbits, possums, squirrels, and each other. Both scavenge whatever dies. The dogs used to belong to people, or their ancestors did, but dogs eat meat. These days, no poor middle-class person who had an edible piece of meat would give it to a dog. Rich people still keep dogs, either because they like them or because they use them to guard estates, enclaves, and businesses. The rich have plenty of other security devices, but dogs are extra insurance. Dogs scare people. I did some shooting today, and I was leaning against a boulder watching others shoot when I realized there was a dog nearby watching me. Just one dog. Male, yellow-brown, sharp-eared, short-haired. He wasn't big enough to make a meal of me, and I still had the Smith & Wesson, so while he was looking over me, I took a good look at him. He was lean, but he didn't look starved. He looked alert and curious. He sniffed the air, and I remember that dogs were supposed to be oriented more towards scent than sight. Look at that, I said to Joanne Garfield, who was standing nearby. She turned, gasped, and jerked her gun up to aim at the dog. The dog vanished into the dry brush and boulders. Turning, Joanne tried to look everywhere as though she expected to see more dogs stalking us, but there was nothing. She was shaking. "I'm sorry," I said. "I didn't know you were afraid of them." She drew a deep breath and looked at the place where the dog had been. "I didn't know I was either," she whispered. "I've never been so close to one before. I wish I had gotten a better look at it." At that moment, Ora Moss screamed and fired her father's llama automatic. I pushed away from the boulder and turned to see Ora pointing her gun towards some rocks and babbling. "It was over there," she said, her words tumbling one over another. "It was some kind of animal, dirty yellow with big teeth. It had its mouth open. It was huge." "You stupid bitch, you almost shot me," Michael Talcott shouted. I could see now that he had ducked down behind a boulder. He would have been in Aura's line of fire, but he didn't seem to be hurt. "Put your gun away, Aura," my father said. He kept his voice low, but he was angry. I could see that whether Aura could or not. "It was an animal," she insisted. "A big one. It might still be around." "Aura!" My father raised his voice and hardened it. Aura looked at him, then seemed to realize that she had more than a dog to worry about. She looked at the gun in her hand, frowned, fumbled it safe, and put it back into her holster. "Mike?" my father said. "I'm okay," Michael Talcott said. "No thanks to her." "It wasn't my fault," Aura said right on cue. "There was an animal. It could have killed you. It was sneaking up on us." "I think it was just a dog," I said. "There was one watching us over here." Joanne moved, and it ran away. "You should have killed it," Peter Moss said. "What do you want to do, wait until it jumps someone?" "What was it doing?" Jay Garfield asked. "Just watching?" "That's all," I said. "It didn't look sick or starved. It wasn't very big. I don't think it was a danger to anyone here. There are too many of us, and we're all too big." "The thing I saw was huge," Aura insisted. "It had its mouth open." I went over to her because I'd had a sudden thought. "It was panting," I said. "They pant when they're hot. It doesn't mean they're angry or hungry." I hesitated, watching her. "You've never seen one before, have you?" She shook her head. "They're bold, but they're not dangerous to a group like this. You don't have to worry." She didn't look as though she quite believed me, but she seemed to relax a little. The Moss girls were both bullied and sheltered. They were almost never allowed to leave the walls of the neighborhood. They were educated at home by their mothers according to the religion their father had assembled, and they were warned away from the sin and contamination of the rest of the world. I'm surprised that Aura was allowed to come to us for gun handling instruction and target practice. I hope it will be good for her, and I hope the rest of us will survive. "All of you stay where you are," Dad said. He glanced at Jay Garfield and then went on a short trip up among the rocks and scrub oaks to see whether Aura had shot anything. He kept his gun in his hand and the safety off. He was out of our sight for no more than a minute. He came back with a look on his face that I couldn't read. "Put your guns away," he said. "We're going home." "Did I kill it?" Aura demanded. "No, get your bikes." He and Jay Garfield whispered together for a moment, and Jay Garfield sighed. Joanne and I watched them, wondering, knowing we wouldn't hear anything from them until they were ready to tell us. "This is not about a dead dog," Harold Balzer said behind us. Joanne moved back to stand beside him. "It's about either a dog pack or a human pack," I said, "or maybe it's a corpse." It was, as I found out later, a family of corpses. A woman, a little boy of about 4 years, and a just-born infant, all partly eaten. But Dad didn't tell me that until we got home. At the canyon, all we knew was that he was upset. "If there were a corpse around here, we would have smelled it," Harry said. "Not if it were fresh," I countered. Joanne looked at me and sighed the way her father sighs. "If it's that, I wonder where we'll go shooting next time. I wonder when there will be a next time." Peter Moss and the Talcott brothers had gotten into an argument over whose fault it was. that Aura had almost shot Michael and Dad had to break it up. Then Dad checked with Aura to see that she was all right. He said a few things to her that I couldn't hear, and I saw a tear slide down her face. She cries easily. She always has. Dad walked away from her looking harassed. He led us up the path out of the canyon. We walked our bikes, and we all kept looking around. We could see now there were other dogs nearby. We were being watched by a big pack. Jay Garfield brought up the rear, guarding our backs. He said we should stick together, Joanne told me. She had seen me looking back at her father. You and I? Yeah, and Harry. He said we should look out for one another. I don't think these dogs are stupid enough or hungry enough to attack us in daylight. They'll go after some lone street person tonight. Shut up, for God's sake. The road was narrow, going up and out of the canyon. It would have been a bad place to have to fight off dogs. Someone could trip and step off the crumbling edge. Someone could be knocked off the edge by a dog or by one of us. That would mean falling several hundred feet. Down below, I could hear dogs fighting now. We may have been close to their dens or whatever they lived in. I thought maybe we were just close to what they were feeding on. If they come, my father said in a quiet, even voice, freeze, aim, and fire. That will save you. Nothing else will. Freeze, aim, and fire. Keep your eyes open and stay calm. I replayed the words in my mind as we went up the switchbacks, no doubt wanted us to replay them. I could see that Aura was still leaking tears and smearing and streaking her face with dirt like a little kid. She was too wrapped up in her own misery and fear to be of much use. We got almost to the top before anything happened. We were beginning to relax, I think. I hadn't seen a dog for a while. Then, from the front of our line, we heard 3 shots. We all froze, most of us unable to see what had happened. Keep moving, my father called. It's all right. It was just one of the dogs getting too close. Are you okay? I called. Yes, he said. Just come and keep your eyes open. One by one, we came abreast of the dog that had been shot and walked past it. It was a bigger, grayer animal than the one I had seen. There was a beauty to it. It looked like pictures I had seen of wolves. It was wedged against a hanging boulder just a few steps up the canyon wall from us. It moved. I saw its bloody wounds as it twisted. I bit my tongue as the pain I knew it must feel became my pain. What to do? Keep walking. I couldn't. One more step and I would fall and lie in the dirt, helpless against the pain. Or I might fall into the canyon. It's still alive, Joanne said behind me. It's moving. Its 4 feet were making little running motions, its claws scraping against the rock. I thought I would throw up. My belly hurt more and more until I felt skewered through the middle. I leaned on my bike with my left arm. With my right hand, I drew the Smith & Wesson, aimed, and shot the beautiful dog through the head. I felt the impact of the bullet as a hard, solid blow, something beyond pain. Then I felt the dog die. I saw it jerk, shudder, stretch its body long, and freeze. I saw it die. I felt it die. It went out like a match in a sudden vanishing of pain. Its life flared up, then went out. I went a little numb. Without the bike, I would have collapsed. People had crowded close before and behind me. I heard them before I could see them clearly. It's dead, I heard Joanne say. Poor thing. What? My father demanded. Another one? I managed to focus on him. He must have skirted close to the cliff edge of the road and gotten all the way back to us, and he must have run. The same one, I said, managing to straighten up. It wasn't dead. We saw it moving. I put 3 bullets into it, he said. It was moving, Reverend Olamina, Joanne insisted. It was suffering. If Lauren hadn't shot it, someone else would have had to. Dad sighed. Well, it isn't suffering now. Let's get out of here. Then he seemed to realize what Joanne had said. He looked at me. Are you all right? I nodded. I don't know how I looked. No one was reacting to me as though I looked odd. So I must have not shown much of what I had gone through. I think Only Harry Balter, Curtis, Talcott, and Joanne had seen me shoot the dog. I looked at them, and Curtis grinned at me. He leaned against his bike, and in a slow, lazy motion, he drew an imaginary gun, took careful aim at the dead dog, and fired an imaginary shot. "Pow," he said. Just like she does stuff like that every day. "Pow! Let's go," my father said. We began walking up the path again. We left the canyon and made our way down the street. There were no more dogs. I walked, then rode in a daze, still not quite free of the dog I had killed. I had felt it die, and yet I had not died. I had felt its pain as though it were a human being. I had felt its life flare and go out, and I was still alive. Pow. Chapter 5. And again, like all the chapters, there is an epigraph that from the writings of the protagonist, Lauren Oyo Olamina. The epigraph is, "Belief initiates and guides action, or it does nothing." Earthseed, The Books of the Living. Sunday, March 2nd, 2025. It's raining. We heard last night on the radio that there was a storm sweeping in from the Pacific, but most people didn't believe it. "We'll have wind," Corey said. "Wind and maybe a few drops of rain, or maybe just a little cool weather. That would be welcome. It's all we'll get." That's all there has been for 6 years. I can remember the rain 6 years ago, water swirling around the black back porch, not high enough to come into the house, but high enough to attract my brothers who watched to play in it. Corey, forever worried about infection, wouldn't let them. She said they'd be splashing around in a soup of all the wastewater germs we'd been watering our gardens with for years. Maybe she was right, but kids all over the neighborhood covered themselves with mud and earthworms that day, and nothing terrible happened to them. But that storm was almost tropical, a quick, hard, warm September rain. The edge of a hurricane that hit Mexico's Pacific coast. This is a colder winter storm. It began this morning as people were coming to church. In the choir we sang rousing old hymns, accompanied by Corey's piano playing and lightning and thunder from outside. It was wonderful. Some people missed part of the sermon, though, because they went home to put out all the barrels, buckets, tubs, and pots they could find to catch the free water. Others went home to put pots and buckets inside where there were leaks in the roof. I can't remember when any of us have had a roof repaired by a professional. We all have Spanish tile roofs, and that's good. A tile roof is, I suspect, more secure and lasting than wood or asphalt shingles, but time, wind, and earthquakes have taken a toll. Tree limbs have done some damage too. Yet no one has extra money for anything as non-essential as roof repair. At best, some of the neighborhood men can go up with whatever materials they can, scavenge, and create makeshift patches. No one's even done that for a while. If it only rains once every 6 or 7 years, why bother? Our roof is all right so far, and the barrels and things we put out after services this morning are full or filling. Good, clean, free water from the sky. If only it came more often. Monday, March 3rd, 2025. Still raining, no thunder today, though there was some last night. Steady drizzle and occasional heavy showers all day. All day, so different and beautiful. I've never felt so overwhelmed by water. I went out and walked in the rain until I was soaked. Corey didn't want me to, but I did it anyway. It was so wonderful. How can she not understand that? It was so incredible and wonderful. Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. Amy Dunn is dead. 3 years old, unloved, and dead. That doesn't seem reasonable or even possible. She could read simple words and count to 30. I taught her. She so much loved getting attention that she stuck to me during school hours and drove me crazy. Didn't want me to go to the bathroom without her. Dead. I had gotten to like her even though she was a pest. Today I walked her home. After class, I had gotten into the habit of walking her home because the Dunns wouldn't send anyone for her. She knows the way, Christmas said. Just send her over. She'll get here all right. I didn't doubt that she could have. She could look across the street and across the central island and see her house from ours, but Amy had a tendency to wander. Sent her home alone. She might get there or might wind up in the Montoya garden, grazing or in the moss rabbit house, trying to let the rabbits out. So I walked her across, glad for an excuse to get out in the rain again. Amy loved it too, and we lingered for a moment under the big avocado tree on the island. There was a navel orange tree at the back end of the island, and I picked a pair of ripe oranges, one for Amy and one for me. I peeled both of them, and we ate them while the rain plastered Amy's scant, colorless hair against her head and made her look bald. I took her to the door and left her in the care of her mother. You didn't have to get her so wet, Tracy complained. Might as well enjoy the rain while it lasts, I said, and I left them. I saw Tracy take Amy into the house and shut the door, yet somehow Amy wound up outside again, wound up near the front gate, just opposite the Garfield Bolter Dory house. Jake Garfield found that when he came out to investigate, what he thought was another bundle that someone had thrown over the gate. People toss us things sometimes, gifts of envy and hate, a maggoty dead animal, a bag of shit, even an occasional severed human limb or dead child. Dead adults have been lying just beyond our wall. But these were all outsiders. Amy was one of us. Someone shot Amy right through the metal gate. It had to be an accidental hit because you can't see through our gate from the outside. The shooter either fired at someone who was in front of the gate or fired at the gate itself, at the neighborhood, and at us, at our supposed wealth and privilege. Most bullets wouldn't have gotten through the gate. It's supposed to be bulletproof. But it's been penetrated a couple of times before, high up near the top. Now we have 6 new bullet holes in the lower portion, 6 holes, and a 7th dent, a long smooth gauge where a bullet had glanced off without breaking through. We hear so much gunfire day and night, single shots and odd bursts of automatic weapons fire, even occasional blasts from heavy artillery or explosions from grenades or bigger bombs. We worry about those last things, but they're rare. It's harder to steal big weapons, and not many people around here can afford to buy illegal ones. That's what Dad says. The thing is, we hear gunfire so much that we don't hear it. A couple of the Bolter kids said they heard shooting, but as usual they paid no attention to it. It was outside, beyond the wall, after all. Most of us heard nothing except the rain. Amy was going to turn 4 in a couple of weeks. I had planned to give her a little party with my kindergartners. God, I hate this place. I mean, I love it. It's home. These are my people, but I hate it. It's like an island surrounded by sharks, except that sharks don't bother you unless you go under the water. But our land sharks are on their way in. It's just a matter of how long it takes for them to get hungry enough. Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. I walked in the rain again this morning. It was cold, but good. Amy has already been cremated. I wonder if her mother is relieved. She doesn't look relieved. She never liked Amy, but now she cries. I don't think she's faking. The family has spent money it could not afford to get the police involved to try to find the killer. I suspect that the only good this will do will be to chase away the people who live on the sidewalks and streets nearest to our wall. Is that good? The street poor will be back, and they won't love us for sicking the cops on them. It's illegal to camp out on the street the way they do, the way they must, so the cops must knock them around, rob them if they have anything worth stealing, then order them away, or jail them. The miserable will be made even more miserable. None of that can help Amy. I suppose, though, that it will make the Dunns feel better about the way they treated her. On Saturday, Dad will preach Amy's funeral. I wish I didn't have to be there. Funerals have never bothered me before, but this one does. You cared about Amy, Joanne Garfield said to me when I complained to her. We had lunch together today. We ate in my bedroom because it's still raining off and on, and the rest of the house was full of all the kids who hadn't gone home to eat lunch. But my room is still mine. It's the one place in the world where I can go and not be followed by anyone I don't invite in. I'm the only person I know who has a bedroom to herself. These days, even Dad and Corey knock before they open my door. That's one of the best things about being the only daughter in the family. I have to kick my brothers out of here all the time, but at least I can kick them out. Joanne is an only child, but she shares a room with 3 younger girl cousins. whiny Lisa, always demanding and complaining, smart, giggly Robin with her near-genius IQ, and invisible Jessica, who whispers and stares at her feet and cries if you give her a dirty look. All three are Balters, Harry's sisters, and the children of Joanne's mother's sister. The two adult sisters, their husbands, their 8 children, and their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Dory, are all squeezed into one 5-bedroom house. It isn't the most crowded house in the neighborhood, but I'm glad I don't have to live like that. Almost no one cared about Amy, Joanne said, but you did. After the fire, I did, I said. I got scared for her then. Before that, I ignored her like everyone else. So now you're feeling guilty? No. Yes, you are. I looked at her, surprised. I mean it. No. I just hate that she's dead and I miss her, but I didn't cause her death. I just can't deny what all this says about us. What? I felt on the verge of talking to her about things I hadn't talked about before. I'd written about them. Sometimes I write to keep from going crazy. There's a world of things I don't feel free to talk to anyone about. But Joanne is a friend. She knows me better than most people, and she has a brain. Why not talk to her? Sooner or later, I have to talk to someone. What's wrong? She asked. She had opened a plastic container of bean salad. Now she put it down on my night table. Don't you ever wonder if maybe Amy and Mrs. Sims are the lucky ones? I asked. I mean, don't you ever wonder what's going to happen to the rest of us? There was a clap of dull, muffled thunder and a sudden heavy shower. Radio weather reports say today's rain will be the last of the 4-day series of storms. I hope not. Sure, I think about it, Joanne said, with people shooting little kids. How can I not think about it? People have been killing little kids since there have been people, I said. Not in here they haven't, not until now. Yes, that's it, isn't it? We got a wake-up call. Another one. What are you talking about? Amy was the first of us to be killed like that. She won't be the last. Joanne sighed, and there was a little shudder in the sigh. So you think so too? I do, but I didn't know you thought about it at all. Rape, robbery, and now murder. Of course I think about it. Everyone thinks about it. Everyone worries. I wish I could get out of here. Where would you go? That's it, isn't it? There's nowhere to go. There might be. Not if you don't have money. Not if all you know how to do is to take care of babies and cook. I shook my head. You know much more than that. Maybe, but none of it matters. I won't be able to afford college. I won't be able to get a job or move out of my parents' house, because no job I could get would support me, and there are no safe places to move. Hell, my parents are still living with their parents. I know, I said, and as bad as that is, there's more. Who needs more? That's enough. She began to eat the bean salad. It looked good, but I thought I might be about to ruin it for her. There's cholera spreading in southern Mississippi and Louisiana, I said. I heard about it on the radio today. There are too many poor people, illiterate, jobless, homeless, without decent sanitation or clean water. They have plenty of water down there, but a lot of it is polluted. And you know that drug that makes people want to set fires? She nodded, chewing. It's spreading again. It was on the East Coast. Now it's in Chicago. The reports say that it makes watching a fire better than sex. I don't know whether the reporters are condemning it or advertising it. I drew a deep breath. Tornadoes are smashing hell out of Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, and 2 or 3 other states. 300 people dead so far. And there's a blizzard freezing in the northern Midwest, killing even more people. In New York and New Jersey, a measles epidemic is killing people. Measles! I heard about the measles, Joanne said. Strange. Even if people can't afford immunizations, measles shouldn't kill. Those people half dead already, I told her. They've come through the winter cold, hungry, already sick with other diseases, and no, they can't afford immunizations. We were lucky our parents found the money to pay for all our immunizations. If we have kids, I don't see how we'll be able to do even that for them. I know, she sounded almost bored. Things are bad. My mother is hoping this new guy, President Donner, will start to get us back to normal. Normal, I muttered. I wonder what that is. Do you agree with your mother? No. Donner hasn't got a chance. I think he would fix things if he could, but Harry says his ideas are scary. Harry says he'll set the country back 100 years. My father says something like that. I'm surprised that Harry agrees. He would. His own father thinks Donner is a god. Harry would agree with him on anything. I laughed, distracted, thinking about Harry's battles with his father. Neighborhood fireworks, plenty of flash, but no real fire. Why do you want to talk about this stuff? Joanna asked, bringing me back to the real fire. We can't do anything about it. We have to. Have to what? We're 15. What can we do? We can get ready. That's what we've got to do now. Get ready for what's going to happen. Get ready to survive it. Get ready to make a life afterward. Get focused on arranging to survive so that we can do more than just get battered around by crazy people, desperate people, thugs, and leaders who don't know what they're doing. She stared at me. She just stared at me. I don't know what you're talking about. I was rolling too fast, maybe. I'm talking about this place, Joe, this cul-de-sac with a wall around it. I'm talking about the day a big gang of those hungry, desperate, crazy people outside decide to come in. I'm talking about what we've got to do before that happens so we can survive and rebuild, or at least survive and escape to be something other than beggars. Someone's going to just smash our wall and come in? More likely blast it down or blast the gate open. It's going to happen someday. You know that as well as I do. Oh, no, I don't, she protested. She sat up straight, almost stiff, her lunch forgotten for the moment. I bit into a piece of acorn bread that was full of dried fruits and nuts. It's a favorite of mine. But I managed to chew and swallow without tasting it. Joe, we're in for trouble. You've already admitted that. Sure, she said, more shootings, more break-ins, that's what I meant. And that's what will happen for a while. I wish I could guess how long. We'll be hit and hit and hit. Then the big hit will come. And if we're not ready for it, it will be like Jericho. She held herself rigid, rejecting. You don't know that. You can't read the future. No one can. You can, I said, if you want to. It's scary, but once you get past the fear, it's easy. In LA, some walled communities, bigger and stronger than this one, just aren't there anymore. Nothing left but ruins, rats, and squatters. What happened to them can happen to us. We'll die in here unless we get busy now and work out ways to survive. If you think that, why don't you tell your parents, warn them, and see what you say. See what they say. I intend to, as soon as I think of a way to do it that will reach them. Besides, I think they already know. I think my father does anyway. I think most of the adults know. They don't want to know, but they do. My mother could be right about Donner. He really could do some good. No. Donner's just a kind of human banister. A what? I mean, he's like a symbol of the past for us to hold on to as we're pushed into the future. He's nothing, no substance, but having him there, the latest in a 2.5 century long line of American presidents who make people feel that the country, the culture they grew up with is still here, that we'll get through these bad times and go back to normal. We could, she said. We might. I think someday we will. No, she didn't. She was too bright to take anything but the most superficial comfort from her denial. But even superficial comfort is better than none, I guess. I tried another tactic. Did you ever read about the bubonic plague in medieval Europe? I asked. She nodded. She reads a lot the way I do, reads all kinds of things. A lot of the continent was depopulated, she said. Some survivors thought the world was coming to an end. Yes, but once they realized it wasn't, they also realized there was a lot of vacant land available for the taking, and if they had a trade, they realized they could demand better pay for their work. A lot of things changed for the survivors. What's your point? The changes, I thought for a moment. They were slow changes compared to anything that might happen here, but it took a plague to make some of the people realize that things could change. So, things are changing now too. Our adults haven't been wiped out by a plague, so they're still anchored in the past, waiting for the good old days to come back. But things have changed a lot, and they'll change more. Things are always changing. This is just one of the big jumps instead of the little step-by-step changes that are easier to take. People have changed the climate of the world. Now they're waiting for the old days to come back. Your father says he doesn't believe people change the climate in spite of what scientists say. He says only God could change the world in such an important way. Do you believe him? She opened her mouth, looked at me, then closed it again. After a while, she said, I don't know. My father has his blind spots, I said. He's the best person I know, but even he has his blind spots. It doesn't make any difference, she said. We can't make the climate change back no matter why it changed in the first place. You and I can't. The neighborhood can't. We can't do anything. I lost patience. Then let's kill ourselves now and be done with it. She frowned, her round, too serious face almost angry. She tore bits of peel from a small navel orange. What then? She demanded. What can we do? I put the last bite of my acorn bread down and went around to her to my night table. I took several books from the deep bottom of my drawer and showed them to her. This is what I've been doing, reading and studying these over the past few months. These books are old, like all the books in this house. I've also been using Dad's computer when he lets me, to get new stuff. Frowning, she looked them over. 3 books on survival in the wilderness, 3 on guns and shooting, 2 each on handling medical emergencies, California native and naturalized plants and their uses, and basic living, log cabin building, livestock raising, plant cultivation, soap making, that kind of thing. Joanne caught on at once. What are you doing? She asked. Trying to learn to live off the land? I'm trying to learn whatever I can that might help me survive out there. I think we should all study books like these. I think we should bury money and other necessities in the ground where thieves won't find them. I think we should make emergency packs, grab and run packs, in case we have to get out of here in a hurry. Money, food, clothing, matches, a blanket. I think we should fix places outside where we can meet in case we get separated. Hell, I think a lot of things, and I know that no matter how many things I think of, there won't be enough. Every time I go outside, I try to imagine what it might be like to live out there without walls, and I realize I don't know anything. Then why? I intend to survive. She just stared. I mean to learn everything I can while I can, I said. If I find myself outside, maybe what I've learned will help me live long enough to learn more. She gave me a nervous smile. You've been reading too many adventure stories, she said. I frowned. How could I reach her? This isn't a joke, Joe. What is it then? She ate the last section of her orange. What do you want me to say? I want you to be serious. I realize I don't know very much. None of us knows very much. But we can all learn more. Then we can teach one another. We can stop denying reality or hoping it will go away by magic. That's not what I'm doing. I looked out for a moment at the rain, calming myself. Okay, what are you doing? She looked uncomfortable. I'm still not sure that we can really do anything. Joe, tell me what I can do that won't get me in trouble or make me think I'm crazy. Just tell me something. At last. Have you read all your family's books? Some of them, not all. They aren't all worth reading. Books aren't going to save us. Nothing is going to save us. If we don't save ourselves, we're dead. Now use your imagination. Is there anything on your family's bookshelves that might help you if you were stuck outside? No. You answer too fast. Go home and look again. And like I said, use your imagination. Any kind of survival information from encyclopedias, biographies, anything that helps you learn to live off the land and defend ourselves. Even some fiction might be useful. She gave me a sidelong glance. I'll bet, she said. Joe, if you ever need this information, it won't do you any harm. You'll just know a little more than you did before. So what, by the way? Do you take notes when you read? Guarded look. Sometimes. Read this. I handed her one of the plant books. This one was about California Indians, the plants they used, how they used them. An interesting, entertaining little book. She would be surprised. There was nothing in it to scare her or threaten her or push her. I thought I had already done enough of that. Take notes, I told her. You'll remember better if you do. I still don't believe you. Things don't have to be as bad as you say they are. I put the book into her hands. Hang onto your notes, I said. Pay special attention to the plants that grow between here and the coast and between here and Oregon along the coast. I've marked them. I said I don't believe you. I don't care. She looked down at the book, ran her hands over the black cloth and cardboard binding. So we learn to eat grass and live in the bushes, she muttered. We'll learn to survive, I said. It's a good book. Take care of it. You know how my father is about his books. Thursday, March 6th, 2025. The rain stopped. My windows are on the north side of the house, and I can see the clouds breaking up. They're being blown over the mountains and toward the desert. Surprising how fast they can move. The wind is strong and cold now. It might cost us a few trees. I wonder how many years it will be before we see rain again. Chapter 6. Epigraph. Drowning people sometimes die fighting their rescuers. Earthseed. The Books of the Living. Saturday, March 8th, 2025. Joanne told. She told her mother, who told her father, who told my father, who told her one of those serious talks with me. Damn her! Damn her! I saw her today at the service we had for Amy, and yesterday at school. She didn't say a word about what she had done. It turns out she told her mother on Thursday. Maybe it was supposed to be a secret between them or something, but oh, Phillida Garfield was so concerned for me, so worried, and she didn't like my scaring Joanne. Was Joanne scared? Not scared enough to use her brain, it seems. Joanne always seemed so sensible. Did she think getting me into trouble would make the danger go away? No, that's not it. This is just more denial, a dumb little game of, if we don't talk about bad things, maybe they won't happen. Idiot! I'll never be able to tell her anything important again. What if I'd been more open? What if I had talked religion with her? I'd wanted to. How will I ever be able to talk about anyone about that, to anyone about that? What I did say worked its way back to me tonight. Mr. Garfield talked to Dad after the funeral. It was like the whispering game that little kids play. The message went all the way from, we're in danger here and we're going to have to work hard to save ourselves, to Lauren is talking about running away because she's afraid that outsiders are going to riot and tear down the walls and kill us all. Well, I had said some of that, and Joanne had made it clear that she didn't agree with me. But I hadn't just let the bad prediction stand alone. We're going to hide, boo-hoo. What would be the point of that? Still, only the negative stuff came home to me. Lauren, what did you say to Joanne? My father demanded. He came to my room after dinner where we could have been doing his final work on tomorrow's sermon. He sat down on one chair and stared at me in the way that meant, where is your mind, girl? What's the matter with you? That look plus Joanne's name told me what had happened, what this was about. My friend Joanne. Damn her! I sat on my bed and looked back at him. I told her we were in for some bad, dangerous times, I said. I warned her we ought to learn what we could now so we could survive. That was when he told me how upset Joanne's mother was. how upset Joanne was, and how they both thought I needed to talk to someone because I thought our world was coming to an end. Do you think our world is coming to an end? Dad asked, and with no warning at all, I almost started crying. I had all I could do to hold it back. What I thought was, no, I don't think your world is coming to an end. I think your world is coming to an end, and maybe you with it. That was terrible. I hadn't thought about it in such a personal way before. I turned and looked out a window until I felt calmer. When I faced him again, I said, "Yes, don't you?" He frowned. I don't think he expected me to say that. "You're 15, he said. You don't really understand what's going on here. The problems we have now have been building since long before you were born." I know. He was still frowning. I wondered what he wanted me to say. "What were you doing then?" he asked. "Why did you say those things to Joanne?" I decided to go on telling the truth for as long as I could. I hate to lie to him. What I said was true. I insisted. "You don't have to say everything you think you know," he said. "Haven't you figured that out yet?" "Joanne and I were friends," I said. "I thought I could talk to her." He shook his head. "These things frighten people. It's best not to talk about them." "But Dad, that's like ignoring a fire in the living room because we're all in the kitchen, and besides, house fires are too scary to talk about." "Don't warn Joanne or any of your other friends," he said. "Not now. I know you think you're right, but you're not doing anyone any good. You're just panicking people." I managed to suppress a surge of anger by shifting the subject a little. Sometimes the way to move Dad is to go at him from several directions. "Did Mr. Garfield give you back your book?" I asked. "What book?" "I loaned Joanne a book about California plants and the ways Indians use them. It was one of your books. I'm sorry I loaned it to her. It's so neutral. I didn't think it could cause trouble, but I guess it has." He looked startled, and then almost smiled. "Yes, I will have to have that one back, all right. You wouldn't have the acorn bread you like so much without that one. Not to mention a few other things we take for granted." "Acorn bread?" He nodded. Most of the people in this country don't eat acorns, you know. They have no tradition of eating them. They don't know how to prepare them, and for some reason they find the idea of eating them disgusting. Some of our neighbors wanted to cut down all our big live oak trees and plant something useful. You wouldn't believe the time I had changing their minds. What did people eat before? Bread made of wheat and other grains, corn, rye, oats, things like that. Too expensive. Didn't used to be. You get that book back from Joanne. He drew a deep breath. Now, let's get off the sidetrack and back onto the main track. What were you planning? Did you try to talk Joanne into running away? Then I sighed. Of course not. Her father says you did. He's wrong. This is about staying alive, learning to live outside so that we'd be able to if we ever had to. He watched me as though he could read the truth in my mind. When I was little, I used to think he could. "All right," he said. "You may have meant well, but no more scare talk." It wasn't scare talk. We do need to learn what we can while there's time. That's not up to you, Lauren. You don't make decisions for this community. Oh, hell, if I could just find a balance between holding back too much and poaching. Yes, sir. He leaned back and looked at me. "Tell me exactly what you told Joanne. All of it." I told him. I was careful to keep my voice flat and passionless, but I didn't leave anything out. I wanted him to know, to understand what I believed, the non-religious part of it anyway. When I finished, I stopped and waited. He seemed to expect me to say more. He just sat there for a while and stared at me. I couldn't tell what he felt. Other people never could if he didn't want them to. But I've never been able to most of the time. Now I felt shut out, and there was nothing I could do about it. I waited. At last he let his breath out as though he'd been holding it. "Don't talk about this any more," he said in a voice that didn't invite argument. I looked back at him, not wanting to give a promise that would be a lie. Lauren, Dad, I want your promise that you won't talk about this anymore. What to say? I wouldn't promise. I couldn't. We could make earthquake packs, I suggested. Emergency kits that we can grab in case we have to get out of the house fast. If we call them earthquake packs, the idea might not bother people so much. People are used to worrying about earthquakes. All this came out in a rush. I want your promise, daughter. I slumped. Why? You know I'm right. Even Mrs. Garfield must know it. So why? I thought he would yell at me or punish me. His voice had that warning edge to it my brothers and I had come to call the rattle, as in a rattlesnake's warning sound. If you pushed him past the rattle, you were in trouble. If he called you son or daughter, you were close to trouble. Why? I insisted. Because you don't have any idea what you're doing, he said. He frowned and rubbed his forehead. When he spoke again, the edge went out of his voice. It's better to teach people than to scare them, Lauren. If you scare them and nothing happens, they lose their fear, and you lose some of your authority with them. It's harder to scare them a second time, harder to teach them, harder to win back their trust. Best to begin by teaching. His mouth crooked into a little smile. It's interesting that you chose to begin your efforts with the book you lent to Joanne. Did you ever think of teaching from that book? Teaching my kindergartners? Why not? Get them started on the right foot. You could even put together a class for older kids and adults, something like Mr. Ibarra's woodcarving class, Mrs. Balter's needlework classes, and young Robert Shue's astronomy lectures. People are bored. They wouldn't mind another informal class now that they've lost the Giannis television. If you can think of ways to entertain them and teach them at the same time, you'll get your information out, and all without making anyone look down. Look down into the abyss, daughter. But I wasn't in trouble anymore, not at the moment. You've just noticed the abyss, he continued. The adults in this community have been balancing at the edge of it for more years than you've been alive. I got up, went over to him, and took his hand. It's getting worse, Dad. I know. Maybe it's time to look down. Time to look for some hand or footholds before we get pushed in. That's why we have target practice every week and laser wire and our emergency bill. Your idea for emergency packs is a good one. Some people already have them for earthquakes. Some will assemble them if I suggest it. And of course, some won't do anything at all. There are always some people who won't do anything. Will you suggest it? Yes, at the next neighborhood association meeting. What else can we do? None of this is fast enough. It will have to be. He stood up, a tall, broad wall of a man. Why don't you ask around, see if anyone in the neighborhood knows anything about martial arts? You need more than a book or two to learn good, dependable, unarmed combat. I blinked. Okay. Check with old Mr. Shue and Mr. and Mrs. Montoya. Mr. and Mrs.? I think so. Talk to them about classes, not about Armageddon. I looked up at him, and he looked more like a wall than ever, standing and waiting. And he offered me a lot, all I would get, I suspected. I sighed. Okay, Dad, I promise. I'll try not to scare anyone else. I just hope things hold together long enough for us to do it your way. And he echoed my sigh. At last. Good. Now come out back with me. There are some important things buried in the yard in sealed containers. It's time for you to know where they are, just in case. Sunday, March 9th, 2025. Today, Dad preached from Genesis 6, Noah and the ark, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him from his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And then, of course, later God says to Noah, "Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Room shalt thou make of the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch." Dad focused on the two-part nature of the situation. God decides to destroy everything except Noah, his family, and some animals. But if Noah is going to be saved, he has plenty of hard work to do. Joanne came to me after church and said she was sorry for all the craziness. "Okay," I said. "Still friends?" she asked. And I hedged. "Not enemies, anyway. Get my father's book back to me. He wants it." My mother took it. I didn't know she'd get so upset. "It isn't hers. Get it back to me. Or have your dad give it to mine. I don't care, but he wants his book." "All right." I watched her leave the house. She looked so trustworthy, tall and straight and serious and intelligent. I still feel inclined to trust her, but I can't. I don't. She has no idea how much she could have hurt me if I had given her just a few more words to use against me. I don't think I'll ever trust her again, and I hate that. She was my best friend. Now she isn't. Wednesday, March 12, 2025. Thieves got in last night. They stripped the sisters' trees in the shoe yard and the Talcott yard. In the process, they trampled what was left of winter gardens and much of the spring planting. Dad says we have to set up a regular watch. He tried to call a neighborhood association meeting for tonight, but it's a work night for some people, including Gary Shue, who sleeps over at his job whenever he has to report in person. We're supposed to get together for a meeting on Saturday. Meanwhile, Dad got Jade Garfield, Wyatt, and Kayla Talcott, Alex Montoya, and Edwin Dunn together to patrol the neighborhood in shifts and armed pairs. That meant that except for the Talcotts, who are already a pair and who are so angry about their garden that I pity any thief who gets in their way, the others have to find partners among the other adults in the neighborhood. "Find someone you trust to protect your back," I heard Dad tell the little group. Each pair was to patrol 2 hours from just before dark until after dawn. The first patrol, walking through or looking into all the backyards, would get people used to the idea of watchers while they were still awake enough to understand. "Make sure you see if you get first watch," Dad said. "The sight of you will remind them that there will be watchers all through the night. We don't want any of them mistaking you for thieves." Sensible. People go to bed after dark to save electricity, but between dinner and darkness they spend time in their porches or in their yards where it isn't so hot. Some people listen to their radio on front or back porches. Now and then people get together to play music, sing, play board games, talk, or get out on the paved part of the street for volleyball, touch football, basketball, or tennis. People used to play baseball, but we just can't afford what that costs in windows. A few people just find a corner and read a book while there's still daylight. It's a good, comfortable recreational time. What a pity to spoil it with reminders of reality, but it can't be helped. "What will you do if you catch a thief?" Corey asked my father before he went out. He was on the second shift, and he and Corey were having a rare cup of coffee together in the kitchen while he waited. Coffee was for special occasions. I couldn't miss the good smell of it in my room where I lay awake. I eavesdrop. I don't put drinking glasses to walls or crouch with my ears against doors, but I do often lie awake long after dark when we kids are supposed to be asleep. The kitchen is across the hall from my room. The dining room is nearby at the end of the hall, and my parents' room is next door. The house is old and well insulated. If there's a shut door between me and the conversation, I can't hear much, but at night, with all or most of the lights out, I can leave my door open a crack, and if other doors are also open, I can hear a lot. I learn a lot. "We'll chase him off, I hope," Dad said. "We've agreed to that. We'll give him a good scare, and he'll let him know there are easier ways to get $1. $1? Yes, indeed. Our thieves didn't steal all that food because they were hungry. They stripped those trees, took everything they could." "I know," Corey said. "I took some lemons and grapefruits to both the Shoes and the Wyatts today and told them they could pick from our trees if they needed more. I took them some seed, too. They both had a lot of young plants trampled, but this early in the season they should be able to repair the damage." "Yes," my father paused. "But you see my point. People steal that way for money. They're not desperate, just greedy and dangerous. We might be able to scare them into looking for easier pickings." "But what if you can't?" Corey asked, almost whispering. Her voice fell so low I was afraid I would miss something. "If you can't, will you shoot them?" "Yes," he said. "Yes?" She repeated in that same small voice. "Just yes?" She was like Joanne all over again, denial personified. What planet do people like that live on? "Yes," my father said. "Why?" There was a long silence. When my father spoke again, his own voice had gotten very soft. "Baby, If these people steal enough, they'll force us to spend more than we can afford on food or go hungry. We live on the edge, as it is. You know how hard things are. But couldn't we just call the police? For what? We can't afford their fees. And anyway, they're not interested until after a crime has been committed. Even then, if you call them, they won't show up for hours, maybe not for 2 or 3 days. I know. What are you saying then? You want the kids to go hungry? You want thieves to come into the house once they've stripped the gardens? But they haven't done that. Of course they have. Mrs. Sims was only their latest victim. She lived alone. She always said she shouldn't do that. You want to trust them not to hurt you or the kids just because there are 7 of us? Baby, we can't live by pretending this is still 20 or 30 years ago. But you'll go to jail, she was crying, not sobbing, but speaking with that voice full of tears that she can manage sometimes. No, Dad said. If we have to shoot someone, we're together in it. After we've shot him and carry him to the nearest house, it's still legal to shoot housebreakers. After that, we do a little damage and get our story straight. Long, long silence. You could still get in trouble. I'll risk it. Another long silence. Thou shalt not kill, Corey whispered. Nehemiah 4, Dad said, verse 14. There was nothing more. A few minutes later, I heard Dad leave. I waited until I heard Corey go to her room and shut the door. Then I got up, shut my door, moved my lamp so the light wouldn't show into the door. Then I turned it on and I opened my grandmother's Bible. She had a lot of Bibles, and Dad had let me keep this one. Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 14. And I looked up and rose up and said unto the nobles and to the rulers and to the rest of the people, Be not afraid of them. Remember the Lord, which is great and terrible, and fight for your brethren, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your houses. Interesting that Dad had that verse ready and that Corey recognized it. Maybe they've had this conversation before. Saturday, March 15th, 2025. It's official. Now we have a regular neighborhood watch, a roster of people from every household who are over 18, good with guns, their own and others, and considered responsible by my father and by the people who have already been patrolling the neighborhood. Since none of the watchers have ever been cops or security guards, they'll go on working in pairs, watching out for each other as well for the neighborhood. They'll use whistles to call for help if they need it. Also, they'll meet once a week to read, discuss, and practice martial arts and shooter techniques. The Montoyas will give their martial arts classes, all right, but not at my suggestion. Old Mr. Shu is having back problems, and he won't be teaching anything for a while, but the Montoyas seem to be enough. I plan to sit in the classes as often as I can to stand to share everyone's practice pains. Dad has collected all his books from me this morning. All I have left are my notes. I don't mind. Thanks to the garden thieves, people are preparing themselves for the worst. I feel almost grateful to the thieves. They haven't come back, by the way, our thieves. When they do, we should be able to give them something they don't expect. Saturday, March 29th, 2025. Our thieves paid us another visit last night. Maybe they weren't the same ones, but their intentions were the same, to take away what someone else had sweated to grow and very much needs. This time they were after Richard Moss's rabbits. Those rabbits are the neighborhood's only livestock, except for some chickens the Cruz and Montoya families tried to raise a few years ago. Those were stolen as soon as they were old enough to make noise and let outsiders know they were there. The Moss rabbits had been our secret until this year, when Richard Moss insisted on selling meat and whatever his wives could make from raw or tanned rabbit hides out beyond the wall. The Mosses had been selling to us all along, of course, meat, hides, fertilizer, everything except live rabbits. Those he hoarded as breeding stock. But now, stubborn, arrogant, and greedy, he decided he could earn more if he peddled his merchandise outside the house. So now the word is out on the streets about the damned rabbits, and last night someone came to get them. The Moss Rabbit House is a converted 3-car garage added to the property in the 1980s, according to Dad. It's hard to believe that any household once had 3 cars, and gas-fueled cars at that, but I remember the old garage before Richard Moss converted it. It was huge, with 3 black oil spots on the floor where 3 cars had once been housed. Richard Moss repaired the walls and roof, put in windows for cross-ventilation, and in general made the place almost fit for people to live in. In fact, it's much better than what a lot of people live in now on the outside. He built rows of tiers of cages, hutches, and put in more electric lights and ceiling fans. The fans can be made to work on kid power. He's hooked them up to an old bicycle frame, and every Moss kid who's old enough to manage the pedals sooner or later gets drafted into powering the fans. The Moss kids hate it, but they know what they'll get if they don't do it. I don't know how many rabbits the Mosses have now, but it seems they're always killing and skinning and doing disgusting things to pelts. Even a little monopoly is worth a lot of trouble. The two thieves had managed to stuff 13 rabbits into canvas sacks by the time our watchers spotted them. The watchers were Alejandro Montoya and Julia Lincoln, and one of the Shani Yanni's sisters. Mrs. Montoya has 2 kids sick with the flu, so she's off the roster for a while. Mrs. Lincoln and Mr. Montoya followed the plan that a group of watchers had put together at their meetings. Without a word of command or warning, they fired their guns into the air 2 or 3 times each, at the same time blowing their whistles full blast. They kept to cover, but inside the Moss house, someone woke up and turned on the rabbit house lights. That would have been a lethal mistake for the watchers, but they were hidden behind the pomegranate bushes. The 2 thieves ran like rabbits. Abandoning sacks, rabbits, pry bars, a long coil of rope, wire cutters, and even an excellent long aluminum ladder, they scrambled up that ladder and over the wall in seconds. Our wall is 3 meters high and topped off with pieces of broken glass, as well as usual barbed wire and the all but invisible laser wire. All the wire had been cut in spite of our efforts. What a pity we couldn't afford to electrify or set up other traps. But at least the glass, the oldest, simplest of our tricks, had gotten one of them. We found a broad stream of dried blood down inside the wall this morning. We also found a Glock 19 pistol where one of the thieves had dropped it. Mrs. Lincoln and Mr. Montoya could have been shot. If the thieves hadn't been scared out of their minds, there could have been a gun battle. Someone in the Moss house or a neighboring house could have been hurt or killed. Corey went after Dad about that once they were alone in the kitchen tonight. I know, Dad said. He sounded tired and miserable. Don't think we haven't thought about these things. That's why we want to scare the thieves away. Even shooting into the air isn't safe. Nothing's safe. They ran away this time, but they won't always run. I know. So what then? You protect rabbits or oranges and maybe get a child killed? Silence. We can't live this way, Corey shouted. I jumped. I've never heard her sound like this way before. We do live this way, Dad said. There was no longer anger in his voice, no emotional response at all to her shouting. There was nothing. Weariness, sadness. I've never heard him sound so tired, so almost beaten. And yet he had won. His idea had beaten off a pair of armed thieves without anyone having to hurt anyone. If the thieves had hurt themselves, that was their problem. Of course they would come back, or others would come. That would happen no matter what. And Corey was right. The next thieves might not lose their guns and run away. So what? Should we lie in our beds and let them take all we had and hope they were content with stripping our gardens? How long does a thief stay content? And what's it like to starve? We couldn't make it without you, Corey was saying. She wasn't shouting now. That could have been you out there facing criminals. Next time it might be you. You could be shot protecting the neighbor's rabbits. Did you notice, Dad said, that every off-duty watcher answered the whistles last night? They came out to defend their community. I don't care about them. It's you I'm worried about. No, he said. We can't think that way anymore. Corey, there's nobody to help us but God and ourselves. I protect Moss's place in spite of what I think of him, and he protects mine, no matter what he thinks of me. We all look out for one another. He paused. I've got plenty of insurance. You and the kids should be able to make it all right if... No, Corey said. Do you think that's all it is? Money? Do you think... No, babe, no. Pause. I know what it is to be left alone. This world is no place to be alone in. There was a long silence. I didn't think they would say any more. I lay on my bed, wondering if I should get up and shut my door so I could turn on my lamp and write. But there was a little more. What are we supposed to do if you die? She demanded, and I think she was crying. What do you do if they shoot you over some damn rabbits? Live, Dad said. That's all anybody can do right now. Live. Hold out. Survive. I don't know whether good times are coming back again, but I know that won't matter if we don't survive these times. That was the end of their talk. I lay in the dark for a long time, thinking about what they had said. Corey was right again. Dad might get hurt. He might get killed. I don't know how to think about that. I can write about it, but I don't feel it. On some deep level, I don't believe it. I guess I'm as good at denial as anyone. So Corey is right, but it doesn't matter. And Dad is right, but he doesn't go far enough. God is change, and in the end, God prevails. But God exists to be shaped. It isn't enough for us to just survive, limping along, playing business as usual while things get worse and worse. If that's the shape we give to God, then someday we must become too weak, too poor, too hungry, too sick to defend ourselves, and then we'll be wiped out. There has to be more we can do, a better destiny that we can shape, another place, another way, something. Chapter 7, and we'll just read the first entry in Chapter 7 that'll take us up into the present part of the timeline, and then we'll draw the line there. So we're almost finished. The epigraph to Chapter 7 from the writings of Lauren Oya Olamina is, "We are all God's seed, but no more or less than any other aspect of the universe. God's seed is all there is, all that changes. Earth's seed is all that spreads earth life to new earths. The universe is God's seed. Only we are Earth's seed, and the destiny of Earth's seed is to take root among the stars." Earth's Seed, the Books of the Living. Saturday, April 26th, 2025. Sometimes naming a thing, giving it a name, or discovering its name helps one to begin to understand it. Knowing the name of a thing and knowing what that thing is gives for me even more of a handle on it. The particular God is change belief system that seems right to me will be called Earth Seed. I've tried to name it before. Failing that, I've tried to leave it unnamed. Neither effort has made me comfortable. Name plus purpose equals focus for me. Well, today I found the name, found it while I was weeding the back garden and thinking about the way plants seed themselves, wind-borne, animal-borne, water-borne, far from their parent plants. They have no ability at all to travel great distances under their own power, and yet they do travel. Even they don't have to just sit in one place and wait to be wiped out. There are islands thousands of miles from anywhere, the Hawaiian Islands, for example, and Easter Island, where plants seeded themselves and grew long before any humans arrived. Earth Seed. I am Earth Seed. Anyone can be. Someday I think there will be a lot of us, and I think we'll have to seed ourselves farther and farther from this dying place. I've never felt that I was making any of this up, not the name Earthseed, not any of it. I mean, I've never felt that it was anything other than real. Discovery rather than invention. Exploration rather than creation. I wish I could believe it was all supernatural and that I'm getting messages from God, but then I don't believe in that kind of God. All I do is observe and take notes, trying to put things down in ways that are as powerful, as simple, and as direct as I feel them. I can never do that. I keep trying, but I can't. It's not good enough as a writer or poet or whatever it is I need to be. I don't know what to do about that. It drives me frantic sometimes. I'm getting better, but so slowly. The thing is, even with my writing problems, every time I understand a little more, I wonder why it's taken me so long, why there was ever a time when I didn't understand a thing so obvious and real and true. Here's the only puzzle in it, the only paradox, or a bit of illogic or circular reasoning, or whatever it should be called. Why is the universe to shape God? Why is God to shape the universe? I can't get rid of it. I've tried to change it or dump it, but I can't. I cannot. It feels like the truest thing I've ever written. It's as mysterious and obvious as any other explanation of God or the universe I've ever read, except that to me the others feel inadequate, at best. All the rest of Earthseed is explanation. What God is, what God does, what we are, what we should do, what we can't help doing. Consider whether you are a human being, an insect, a microbe, or a stone. This verse is true. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. I'm going to go through my old journals and gather the verses I've written into one volume. I'll put them into one of the exercise notebooks that Corey hands out to the older kids now that there are so few computers in the neighborhood. I've written plenty of useless stuff in those books, getting my high school work out of the way. Now I'll put one to better use. Then, someday when people are able to pay more attention to what I say, to how old I am, I'll use these verses to pry them loose from the rotting past, and maybe push them into saving themselves and building a future that makes sense. That's if everything will just hold together for a few more years. And this is where we'll draw the line, because we've caught up in now beginning of chapter 7, with the entry for Saturday, April 26, 2025, to the present time, that is to say, May 10th, 2025. We'll continue our exploration of Octavia Butler's parable of the sower next month, because her next journal entry is dated Saturday, June 7th, 2025. That's just a couple of weeks from now. And we'll continue to look at Octavia Butler's concept of sacred labor, the sacredness of labor, sacralized labor as the essential activity of not just drudgery, but of the transformation of humanity, and how she expresses it in literature, and how her labor is creating literature. The Lauren Olamina is creating wisdom literature, and how Octavia Butler herself created a type of wisdom literature in her own speculative fiction novel, Parable of the Sower. And okay, so this has been a kind of a marathon episode, but it was necessary to look at that, and we'll intermittently check into Parable of the Sower as we catch up with its alternate present timeline, and we'll update this concept of the sacredness of labor and the sacredness of art in the work of Octavia Butler, and we'll try to combine that with our further explorations on art is the church of God, the Creator. So, it was great. See you soon.